Hello, everyone, and welcome to the UBA Season 5 Post Draft Power Rankings at 3 a.m. Actually, it's almost 4 now. And I'm joined by dwinch.
It's 3 a.m. for your boy. Some real degen hours.
Best hours. Um, I've done the disclaimer enough times where I don't need to do it anymore, I think. Just opinions, and you can be a good player and outplay with a bad draft, etc. So I guess we just go right into it. Um, Real quick, dwinch, what do you think might guess? What is your guess for the bottom ranked team?
I'm gonna guess between Jolty or Mars.
You got it right. It's Jolty.
I was gonna say it's the Jolty clause of being always last but still pulling through.
I mean, he's used to it at this point. I used to feel bad about him always getting there, but I don't think he's going to change his ways. And
Absolutely not.
he's just going to do what he wants to do. He's just going to do jolty things. But this seems pretty bad. He's
Yeah,
got
it's
no relevant mons over 100, no strong breakers, a horrible ice weakness, only one decent hazard setter in Hippo, and a lot of do nothing fat.
something I noticed is he has three weaknesses to fairy, and then his fairy resists aren't that solid. I mean, he has drill,
Is
but
it
you don't
just
always want
drill?
drill to resist. He's Arcanine.
Yeah, I guess Arcanite's there too. Yeah, the ice weakness is also pretty substantial too. He's got Rotom and Arcanine as well, but also a fuck ton of weak to ice, similar to Fairy.
Mm.
And yeah,
And the
just
usual crest.
yeah, just not the breaking power it needs and not the speed it needs to function. I think that's really all we need for this one. Quick and
Yeah, pretty
painful,
much.
as usual for Jolty. You were also right about the whole bottom too, because second is Mars, or I guess it's number 11 or 10 because I'm not ranking myself.
Mm.
I think there's a lot of good things going on with this team and a lot of bad things. He's got a pretty substantial ground weakness, where the only resists are Serena and Vikavolt, and Vikavolt's kind of bad and can't come in on rocks, and Serena isn't even immune to it, and then a lot of weaks to it to compensate, like with Cinderace, Muck, or not to compensate, but to make it worse with Muck, Cinderace, and Melmetal. So his first two picks and most valuable picks are already weak to ground, while his resists to it are pretty bad.
Yeah, and his only stealth rocker is Sandslash, and he's my boy, but you
Yeah,
can't bring him every week.
it's
I
also
do
his only electric immunity when he has Barraskewda and Finny.
yeah, I do think Cinderace is gonna be really nice for him with his new protein ability, and also the what was it,
Court swap.
change? Court change will be really nice if he wants to make that as a gimmick hazard setter, I guess.
He doesn't need Sandslash, just uses opponent's rocks against them. But yeah, and the defense of course is solid, but like not as good as you would like.
Shelgon is too much of an unmon.
Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. Weaknesses are pretty clear. Something that's nice is that this season there's not any super unteams. I can't remember if
That's
there
true.
was in season 4, but three and before there were some pretty very unteams. This season there's not super bad at the bottom. I think after Mars they all start to get reasonably good.
I agree.
Um, hmm. Is there anything else I wanted to say? No, I think that's about it. All right. Any ideas for who my next one is, dwinch?
Um, Not really, actually. Maybe I think Jeff is pretty low, in my opinion.
Hmm. I'm gonna disagree, but we'll get to that later. Um, at number 9, I guess I have Remaxo, and
Wow.
it's very clear he wanted to try a lot of the new mons, but that may have come at a cost. Uh,
Yeah.
one of my primary issues with the team is that he's got a lot of key fire weeks, and the resists are pretty trash to it, being just Army and Ragzard, and like a whole lot of weeks and very important weeks to fire.
Yeah. I guess when I was looking over the teams pretty quickly, I didn't look at the actual mods that resisted it. I just looked at going down the like type sheet that he only had one that was he had like three different types with three weaknesses, and
Mm-hmm.
then all of them had decent resist through, but I didn't look at the actual mons.
Where is decent fire resist though? I guess it's
Yeah, that's
Noivern, but Noivern's pretty on as well as Zard,
hmm.
at least as a resist. He
And
also has a. Oh, what is that?
I'm excited to see all the new mons use like I want because Darm is wrecking OU right now. I want to see how it does in draft. People can prep for it.
Mm-hmm. I think his team also has a serious problem dealing with bulky waters because there's nothing that really happily comes in it besides his what's his face. It's not
Zerora,
Gossifleur. It evolved from Gossifleur, right? What's his face?
Eldgas.
Eldegoss. That's them. But is it? Its special attack is like abysmal, right? I can't pull up my builder
Oh.
right now because I don't want to show teams and shit. But hmm,
Its HP is 60, defense 90, special defense is 120 though.
what are its attacking stats?
Attack is 50, special attack is 80.
Okay, 80 is like not abysmal, but definitely not good. Um,
Mm.
but I don't think it has too many moves that are like long term helpful moves to click, especially with Toxic being gone. Besides like spinning, but that's only helpful if your opponent actually had hazards.
Regen might be a little bit nice for it, but
Yeah, but
it
anyways,
doesn't seem to have. Yeah.
point is like a vast majority of his team actually has a very hard time dealing with bulky waters. Only only Zera really effectively breaks them, and Zera doesn't like getting scalded or hit with toxic.
His hazard setters are pretty bad. I mean, Donphan's great, and we're
Donphan's
not
high.
entirely sure how Kursula is gonna do yet.
I don't think Curso is a particularly good rocker. I think Ursula lots of times just wants to, would rather always be clicking shit like Wisp and Strength Sap to keep physical attackers out. um, I think he can, if he's playing very well, do stuff like use his Darm a lot of the time to U-turn into his Zera. But like if he ever gets a prediction wrong and attacks into a bulky water, he starts to get into trouble.
Yeah, Darm's attack stat might be enough to do more damage than we think too.
It can, but I just think he has like a hard time dealing with a bulky water once it's in the field. Like he just doesn't have too many options to beat bulky waters.
Yeah, that's true.
Besides his Eldegoss, which is not very hard to take advantage of IMO.
Hmm.
See, I don't think it's a bad draft per se. I just think it has some sizable holes. Also, the rock resists are pretty meh with just being Donphan.
Doesn't Eldegoss resist rock too?
Nope.
Throwing my smarts off today.
All right, I think we'll move on now to number. It would be 8, right?
Yeah.
This PR is going much faster than typical UBAs, to be honest. Number 8, I have Pete. Why is
Oh,
my thingy being weird? Oh, shoot, don't tell me I stopped the video. Fuck, I have to check now to be sure. Okay, no, it's still going.
okay.
Um, with Pete's team, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It just seriously lacks breaking power, which a lot of Pete's teams do.
Mm, I
And
agree.
yeah, and there's just no exceptional synergy with it. It's just like kind of covers every base but loosely and has no synergy and no breaking power.
I can see that, and he has a lot of overlapping weaknesses like fire, rock, and his removal is 2 out of 3 are weak to rock itself.
Yeah, what are his rockers anyways? It's Flicks and Arrow. Is that it?
Yeah,
They're both
and then his
alright rockers, but
removal is Arrow and Mandibuzz and Blastoise, and Arrow and Mandy are both weak to rocks.
I don't think Arrow has ever run defog in the history of man before, but I don't think removal is entirely that important. It can be in some matchups if like Mandibuzz is a critical check to something. But yeah, I think he just with the team he has a hard time winning matches before his opponent is able to break him because his defense is just not good enough to justify his lack of offense, in my opinion.
I agree. I can see that.
Is there anything else I put in my notes? No. Yeah, just unexceptional at anything, in my opinion, and has that breaking issue. So I guess we'll move on from there to Pete, who is the fourth one. He was number what is it, 11, 10, 9? Yeah, he was 8, so we're on to number 7 now, I guess. Almost halfway through. All right, number 7, I have Tepig. You have any thoughts on Tepig?
Um, for Tepig, I think his only like electric immunity being Quagsire is kind of bad because you can just throw pretty much HP grass on, or a lot of mons have grass knot and
Mm-hmm.
just take it out, and then volt switches are free along his whole team.
Is that it?
That's my biggest thing, and then um, like Mew. I mean, always drafting Mew is so hard to prep for because it has so many. It's so versatile. Those are my two bigger things.
I think one of his biggest issues is he has a very hard time breaking through steel types, with really like the vast majority of his team being walled and having a hard time dealing with steel types, with Mew not being able to hit them or toxic them, Rillaboom being hardwalled by steel types, uh, with his facial toxicity, having a hard time with them because they resist Boom Burst, um, especially stuff like Pharaoh or any steel that has a secondary typing that would resist electric, which isn't too many to be fair. Weezing has a hard time with them. So does Lycan, and so does Absol and Dura and the Ice Cream. So he has very few mons that actually can break through them, and the ones who can aren't very sturdy, mainly being Blisef.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Um, Another weakness on top of that is I think ground's pretty problematic for him. Saving grace is that he's got Rillaboom and that sets up terrain, but if he runs into special grounds or grounds who have access to stomping or high horsepower, it's an issue for him because he really doesn't have good ways to switch into it and a whole lot of weaks to it,
Mm. And his only immunity is Halucha.
which can only come in once usefully per game.
Yeah.
Um, what else? I think those are my primary gripes with the team. Just seeing if I can notice anything else in face value. I guess a bit. I think fairies can be a bit annoying for him. But no, he's got Dexterity too. So I think he'd be alright.
They're up for that.
Fairies with earthquake coverage though, which isn't too many to be fair.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's about it for Tepig.
Yeah.
Moving on, it's number 6 now, right? Number
Yeah.
6, I've got PK. Do you have anything to say on PK?
I think the combination between Lando, Suicune, and Charizard's going to be pretty tough to work around. They complement them each other pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And then Zapdos kind of just felt like it has some use, but it was kind of just thrown in there a little bit.
I think it offers him some
Those
pretty
points
good
for something else a little bit
defensive utility,
better.
though. I think he's got a pretty strong core with those guys. And I
Pretty
don't think.
much the main thing that I saw. He's pretty weak to ground as well,
Mhm.
especially with having a Zard. That I know, like he has Lando obviously, but say he's against a Zygarde with like Thousand Arrows, Zapdos isn't going to do anything
He's got
to
solid
help with
resist to the
that.
ground, though, in my opinion, too, to compensate. It could still be a weakness, but I don't think. I think he does an okay job compensating for it with Intimidate Lando and Zapdos. My big issue with his team is he seriously lacks strength or strength in his speed. So like his only mons above 100 are Koba, Jolteon, and uh, what's his face, Persian. I don't think any of them have an attacking stat over 110. And Jolteon's like forced to run hidden power, and it's just not a very strong mon to begin with. So he has a very hard time forcing an opposing offense out. And even then, his Scarfers are pretty much limited to exclusively Lando. So he has a hard time really uh, outrunning opposing offense and forcing them out. In my opinion, I think that's his team's biggest weakness.
Coming from on that,
What was that?
I can see where you're coming from on that. I want to see him actually bring Regigigas to something.
Uh,
See if he can make it work.
if I were PK, I would not want to see him really use anything. Um, yeah, that's about it. I think he's got a really strong core, but he has a hard time outrunning stuff. And yeah, I think his maybe he could have upgraded Jolteon. I don't still know it's still left, but he probably could have gotten a tier 3 that has some more oomph behind it. I think for its speed.
I have to rely on like setting up with Charizard a lot to try and get the speed he wants in the power.
Not even though, because Charizard's only going to be able to do that once per match. So I more mean like actually just force things out and revenge stuff.
Okay.
Because otherwise, you just have to take a hit, and you don't want to be taking hits. Um, so I guess that's it for PK. Moving on to number 6 now, I think, right? 11,
I thought it
10,
was
9,
five.
8, 7, 6. Yeah, you're right. It is 5. Number 5. Take a guess at who it is.
Um,
We've got Akshi, Jeff, Reggie, Cody, and you still left.
I'm gonna
Not in that
say
order.
either Cody or Ashy.
All right. We have you at number 6 or 5. In my
I'll
opinion.
let you go.
All right. Well, you've got Coco plus Lade plus Crook, which I think is a super strong core, but I don't think you do a particularly good job of supporting it outside of those guys, because you've got a lot of fat mons who, not even necessarily fat, but just like slow mons who aren't particularly good at keeping up pressure, which Coco is a mon that really excels at doing that. I think Corviknight fits the team really well defensively, but you just kind of needed more offensive stuff to complement it, in my opinion. Stuff like
All right.
Amogus, Miltank, Gudra are all, and Cole and Mr. Rhyme just really lack the offensive capabilities that it needs. They need to really work well with Coco and exceed. Um, but from 5 on, I think the teams start to get really good, where you're kind of starting to like nitpick at weaknesses, whereas the teams are all really strong.
Sure. Don't sleep on the mime.
Don't
That's
sleep
all
on
I
the
gotta say.
mimes. Seeing if there's
Mm-hmm.
anything else I missed. Um, well, the team's like really sturdy. I just think it needs to be a bit more offensive to excel in some matchups and really take full advantage of Coco's abilities.
Yep.
I guess moving on to number 4, I have Cody. This team is fat as fuck. He's got the Selly Venucore, and those guys are the two most unkillable dudes in the format.
I'm biasly happy between those two.
What was that?
I'm biasly happy that he picked those two together because I love those two, and I understand the want to use Blastoise because of Rapid Spin Shell Smash, but it kind of really weakened the core between the three of them.
You think
It's like the
Blastoise
weakest
ruins
link.
the core?
Weakest link.
I think like throwing a tier 5 never ruins a draft. I think Blastoise is fine here. I think his offense is a bit lacking, but you don't need a ton of offense when you have defense this strong. I just think he can start to run into issues if his defense isn't strong enough. And I think his hazard setting is very underwhelming for a team this fat. Um, if I were him, I'd want a team with better hazard control, like at the very least spikes or toxic spikes, especially because he
Yeah.
has spinning available to him.
Toxic spikes and Runarigus.
Does it? Yeah, but it doesn't get regular spikes, so I guess I was wrong there. But that's also his rocker, unless he brings Kabutops, which he shouldn't, which means Runarigus would have to be doubling on hazards, which isn't impossible, but I think it's suboptimal.
The dock, a Selgor gets regular spikes and T spikes, but it should never bring that.
Well, I mean, it can, but yeah, it's not particularly good at it. Um, but yeah, this team's just like extreme fat, and if you've got the breakers to get through it, then you're gonna have a good time, and if you don't, you're in for a rough time. That's the way I see it.
I think Hydreigon with what it got DD, didn't it?
Yeah, and nasty plot.
That'll work for him pretty nicely.
Yeah, I think Hydru's pretty solid here. I think he probably I would have gone for more electric immunities and resist than he has. Maybe not resist because he has plenty of resist, but I would at least get an extra electric immunity with Selly. But that's just me. To like cut down on the freeness of Volt and the predictability of the counterplay to Volt.
Oh,
But yeah, very solid team. Extremely solid defensive core, about as solid as they come. Um, yeah, that's about it. Uh, Moving on. This is number 4 now, right? Or 3?
it's three.
3, I have Reggie. Um, Reggie's team is like Reggie has like building styles where his teams always look really nice at the end and have like they're really sturdy and like it's hard to find problems with them. But I think his big issue with this team is a lack of breaking power, similar to Pete's, but like not nearly to the extent he does. He has the breaking power to get it done in most matchups. I just think in some matchups, like for versus Cody, for example, he would have a hard time breaking through because he has nothing with very strong initial power and speed, in my opinion.
I can see that in the sense of against Cody, but between Mega T-Tar and Nape can, if you put on a band or a life orb, can break pretty well.
Yeah, Nape is a solid breaker, but it kind of lacks power without setup. So where like if your opponent has like something that's decently fat, it'll have a hard time getting through them. Um, PZ is very strong, but it's also not particularly fast, so it's difficult to get into the match. Torn is good, but it also its attacking stats are underwhelming. So yeah, I think his team's very solid and very good. I just think it's problematic that he I think he needs a bit more breaking power on the team for it to really work. But it's still fine as is. It's still a very good team. It's the way I see it, anyways.
That's about what I said, and that's what I thought first look at it. Said it was overall pretty solid. I think people are gonna sleep on the T in the hat
The tea in the hat,
a lot more. Yep,
the
that's what
British
I'm calling.
combo.
You're gonna get slept on a little bit more than they should be.
We need to get Pete to Photoshop Reggie with Hatteran's hat on and sipping out of a poltergeist.
He just randomly does it. We'll know he watched the whole video through.
Yeah. And then we can turn it into an emote, and every time Reggie wins, we spam it like PK spams the Blazing Infernape emote when he wins.
For it, Pete, figure that out, please.
All right. Do you want to move on to number 2 now? So our the top two now are Action and Jeff. Which order do you think it is? So, someone tells me you weren't very high on either team though, because you wanted to rank them lower. So I'm curious to
Um,
hear what your
I
weaknesses of
would,
them were.
I would go. Look at them. Go with Jeff's underneath Ashy's.
All right. Well, moving on to number 2, I have Axie, so you were wrong. I think Axie's team is really solid. I think Cart plus Lop is a really strong combo, and he's got good support for Lop with Incineroar and Necro, and even Clef. Lando 2 is going to help with resisting fight. Um, I think he can start to encounter some problems if his opponent is able to get up rocks versus him, especially versus like psychic types or things that require Infernape to come in.
Incineroar.
Yeah, yeah. Did I call him Infernape? I think he has a little bit of a ground weakness, with only Lando and Rotom resisting and having quite a few weeks to it. It's not a significant ground weakness, I'd say, but it kind of exists, and I think he kind of has a bit of an over-reliance on Rotom, with it being his main, or like one of his only switch-ins to ground, both ground and flying.
I can see that.
But largely, I think his team's pretty solid and well put together, so that's why I have him very high. And you kind of really have to nitpick to find weaknesses like that. I think versus very good bulky waters, he can start to have an issue because they can kind of annoy Jelly and Wims, but like that's a very small subset of stuff. And maybe even fires or ice types can get a little annoying to him if their fires are a variety that can get through Jelly, or if ice types can get really annoying too if they can get through Jelly, or Frox are up and Instant can't help. But I think those are all kind of nitpicky, and largely the team's very solid.
Yeah, those are just kind of specific scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to add, or move on to number 1 now?
Say move on to one. You covered it pretty well.
All right. So yeah, number 1 I have Jeff. I think I had a very hard time deciding my top 4. I thought they were all pretty close, But I've decided in the end that Jeff and Ashley were the two most solid because they just had the most well-rounded team of. They had very strong cleaners, very strong breakers, and a very workable defensive core, good hazard setting. And that's really the things I feel if you have all of those, then your team's really solid. Like actually had his lop for cleaning, good breaking, and stuff like Cart, Necro, Lando. Very solid defensive mons with Clef, Ensign, and Jelly kind of forming a defensive core. And I think Jeff's got a similar thing going with Mega Zam being pretty much as good as you can get for a cleaning threat and also being incredible at breaking. Chomp being about as good as you can get for a breaking threat and fine at cleaning too, especially with scarf sets. And Rachi being incredibly versatile defensively and having some other good mons tossed in to also help with it, kind of forming a defensive core and also breaking. In my opinion, he has slight weaknesses to ice, or at least like his team's not nearly as resistant to ice as I think a team with Garchomp should be. He's got weaknesses with Chomp, Decidueye, his Claydol, and his Archeops. And his water and Gastro doesn't resist, and one of his fires and Moltres doesn't resist. And I think having the redundancy of Psychic with his probably his two best mons in Rachi and Zam, it leaves him a bit open to Dark and Ghost, but it also kind of forms synergy where they kind of pressure Dark types and Steel types alike, which kind of helps each other. But I think he may have wanted a bit more support with dealing with Darks and Ghosts than he has, since they're both weak to that. But I think largely the team's pretty good.
My biggest thing on it was he has a really big ghost weakness where his only resist is Greninja that can't really take a hit.
Mm-hmm. I can definitely see the Ghost weakness. But Ghost is a very uncommon type. So
That's true.
I usually don't look too far into them, but it's definitely a very existent weakness. So it's not like something you can ignore, in my opinion. But I think every team's gonna have weaknesses.
True.
Are there anything else you had? Any other problems you had with the team? Because you said you thought they were pretty low. I feel the team's pretty strong.
I guess it wasn't really more. It was just off of what I kind of like to draft. So I put it a lot lower than what I normally would have, or than what most people would have. Was I think what came in. Then I looked at it for like 30 seconds and saw a bunch of weaknesses on it, and just kind of let it slip through the cracks.
Mm-hmm. Now that I'm looking at it, he also has a slight weaknesses to ground and flying, but I don't think they're anything unsurmountable. Not ground, but grass and flying. But he does have a Moltres and a Blaziken, which help out in Irachi. If Archeops were less of an unmanned flying, it would be less of an issue, but he still has Irachi. But I usually like to have more than one usable resist to a typing.
That's true.
But yeah, other than that, the speed tiers are good in my opinion. You've got 150 with Zam, which is top of the top, cream of the crop. Chomp, which is a solid speed tier, not incredibly high, and then Gren kind of like middling the two, and having very pretty usable power for its speed tier, and very viable Scarfers with, and Archeops being an okay threat for what it is, and viable Scarfers with Rachi, Blaziken, even Decidueye if it needs to be. Anything else you want to add, or you think that's about it for the video?
I think that's about it for the video, I would say.
Alright. This one went really fast for a typical UBA power rankings. Usually I make these things go hours, but I don't know, I guess with post-draft there's a lot less to say here.
And the teams are getting better,
Yeah,
so you don't
that
have
helps
to
too.
pick at them as much.
Mhm. yeah, hopefully I can go more in depth in the actual power rankings after where I discuss battles because I think that's more my thing where I can go in more in people on their prep and their play. But
For sure.
yeah, I guess that'll be about it for this power rankings video, and I'll see you in the next one.